the first thing you want to understand about world history is that this is exactly what this course is. It's an intro-level course in trying to cover world history from approximately 10 million BCE until 1500 CE. That's before the Common Era, or the Common Era, which is the more politically correct way of saying before Christ, and the Latin term that means essentially after his dominion, or after his birth. Um, and since this is a world history course, which means we're covering more than just Christianity, and certainly we're not covering it purely from a Christian perspective, it means that we have to be more respectful of each other's differences, religious and spiritual differences included, which is why we use the terms before the Common Era and count back from 10 million BCE to 1 BCE, and then start with CE for the Common Era, since these are the dates that we across the world use in common now, for a whole variety of reasons, which we would go through if we were doing a second semester course on world history, which is World History 2, or World History from 1500 to the present, which we are not doing here, by the way. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too. That's approximately what we're covering. And in covering that, we want to hit every aspect of the world in which humans have resided, have lived, have established civilizations, have done stuff in. So that means looking at the Middle East, it means looking at Northern Africa, it means looking at Sub-Saharan and Saharan Africa, it means you're looking at Europe and Asia, it means looking at Oceania, which is the Pacific Islands, where Asian Pacific Islanders have lived for thousands of years. It means even Australia and the Americas. So that's what we're doing in this course. No one group gets primacy over another group just because we happen to live in the United States, which happens to be a Western country. Okay, so just keep that in mind too. All right. So that's what we're doing, but how are we doing it? History in this course is not about memorizing dates, events, what great people did and didn't do, how many wives this guy had, and how many other people did this guy murder, and how many cultures did this guy's army destroy, that kind of stuff. It's kind of, some of that's important if you want to understand larger issues in world history, but it's not the central theme here. Central theme here is looking at different events, going through different aspects of world history, and understanding how and why things happen the way they do, recognizing the patterns and the trends, the long-term patterns and trends that sometimes work themselves out over millennia in order to understand why certain things happen in world history, why first civilizations happened in Mesopotamia, or in Eastern China, or in Egypt, as opposed to, say, in Cameroon, or as opposed to, say, on the tip of South America, or in the middle of Australia. Why does that happen? What are the patterns and trends that emerge that make that possible, right? Those are the things that we want to go through as we go through this course over the next 2 months. And that's what's really important here, how and why. And in order to do how and why, you have to be able to look at facts and interpret them in a way based on the examples, the evidence, the things that you're looking at, to give yourself an opportunity to really understand how you start in point A, but B, C, D, and E lead to all these different kinds of things happening, right? You know, whether it's domestication of livestock, or the agricultural revolution, the rise and fall of empires, having writing systems, all those kinds of things are important in understanding world history. They're certainly more important in understanding what Alexander the Great's great tactics were, defeating the Persians in battles in 331 BCE. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. And so, as the descriptions for the courses go, this is a UMUC description, not mine. It's in the syllabus. The course goals and objectives include the need to understand the patterns of development in early human civilizations, the spread of technologies and cultures, comprehend the cycles of expansion, collapse, and rebuilding that characterize ancient and medieval civilizations. 2. Recognize the shared similarities and unique contributions of each of the major world civilizations, as well as the importance of these interactions with each other. You can call them interactions because that's what they are. Some of those interactions, in fact, probably the majority of them, are violent in nature. So you can recognize the fact that these interactions aren't just these sort of neutral things where you're going, hi, how you doing? But you're doing hi, how you doing while you're shooting someone with an arrow or throwing a spear at them or stabbing them or slicing them with a sword. Okay, so it's not, we use the term interaction, sort of this neutral device, but in reality is a lot of it's violent, right? 3, acquire an appreciation for the evolution of historical analysis and analyses, and methodologies, otherwise known as the how and why approach to history, to begin to think like historians. That's what we're going to try to do in this class. We'll think a little bit like historians. And 4, demonstrate knowledge of transformations and the continuities that mark the beginning of the modern world. In other words, how do we get to this 1500? By the time we get to 1500, there should be enough patterns and trends that we've gone over, have some understanding of how we got to where we are in 2014. That doesn't mean that every time we talk about something that you should compare it to today. I really don't want you to do that, and I will kind of zing you on it when you do that, because it's, a lot of it's not relevant, and quite frankly, as history students in intro-level history course, most of you, if not all of you, really don't have the knowledge and the experience of being a historian or a good history student to be able to draw complex enough parallels between what happened 10,000 or 5,000 or 2,000 years ago to what's happening right now. Meaning that most of your comparisons will actually be too simplistic, not account for the subtle differences in time frame and peoples, and the advantage of being able to have foresight, which to some extent we do have in the 21st century. So anyway, I normally ask if you have any questions, but seeing that I'm just recording this, if you have any questions, just email me about that. I'll go over some of this a little bit more in the other video when I go over the first week. Now, as far as course materials, 2 things you absolutely need to read no matter what. One are the lecture notes, which are my lecture notes, my personal lecture notes that I will go through at least in part each week that we actually do meet in class. So weeks 1 through 8, all in PowerPoint. They're already loaded up under course content in WebTyco. And the other is your textbook, Traditions and Encounters, A Global Perspective on the Past. Should be the 5th edition by the late Jerry Bentley and Herbert Ziegler. That is your other book. If you have older versions of that book, that is perfectly fine. If there's a later version I don't know about, that's fine too. Just as long as you have that textbook, because that's what we'll be operating from. I have recommended supplemental materials there. That's if you're really interested and you want to keep reading beyond just the textbook and my lecture notes. Jared Diamond's books are really good, at least as a start. Some of what he says is a little bit too simplistic in terms of geography and ecology and those sorts of things, but at least it gives you food for thought in thinking about the rise and fall of civilizations, why they happen, where they happen, and when they happen. So, anyway, grading criteria. This is part of the course that you should know most professors don't like grading. We prefer, actually, if we could just teach the course and never have to grade a student if we could at all do that, but we have to do some, part of what we're being paid for is to actually evaluate how well students are picking up on material. And so there are 4 criteria for this. One is, and the most important one in terms of percentages, is active participation. And there are 2 kinds of participation in this course. There's participation in which you come to class, ask questions, and when we have discussion, participate in discussion, and answer questions, ask questions if you have questions while you're there. Be part of the class. It should be simple enough. And the other half is doing the online conferences each week. I'll go over that in a second. But combined, that's 35% of your total grade. More than 1 out of every 3 points that you'll earn in this course comes from what you do in class during discussion and in participation, and what you do online in terms of conferences and answering the question of each week. As far as the conferences themselves, each conference will come with a question of the week, starting with week 1. You'll answer that question hopefully by the end of the day, Thursday, because that will give folks enough time to read all the responses to the question and then respond to your classmates' responses. So I want just one answer. Give me your answer to that question by the end of the day on each Thursday. And then by the end of the week, which of course is the end of the day on Sunday, you give me 2 responses to your classmates' actual answers to the conference question. It's all listed in your syllabus in terms of how I want it done, the rubric for how I actually evaluate it, whether you gave a good response, a very good response, good and solid answer, an excellent answer, a very good and fairly thorough answer, all those kinds of things, so you can get some idea of what it is that I'm looking for. I'll start doing that this week, and we'll continue that throughout the semester. I'll be more heavily involved the first 5 weeks than I'll be the last 3, because I assume by the 6th week that you'll actually have the hang of this. But in any case, that's the part that I expect folks to participate in. I will definitely, as part of the grading process, every 2 weeks I will post your grade, one grade for 2 weeks of discussion, both combined in class and online. So don't expect me to post every Monday. It will happen every other week. So weeks 2, 4, 6, and 8, I will post your discussion grade, your conference, your total active participation grade. So again, that's worth 35%. Really important. As far as the other assignments for this course are concerned, please note 2 things, whether we're talking about the multiple choice exam, term paper assignment, or the quote-unquote take-home final exam, which is, it's all online. If you wanted to do all 3 of them right now, you could actually do all of them right now. The multiple choice exam, which is worth 20% of your final grade, is already posted. There are 25 questions on this exam, all multiple choice. They'll cover roughly the first 3 to 3.5 weeks worth of the course, and they are due on Monday, April the 7th. You can either bring your exam to class, or you can submit it via web typo. You need to submit it in the format in which I can grade it. If it's a Word doc, which it should be, then I need to see it as a Word doc when you upload it under your assignments folder on web typo, so that I can download it and grade it. Please put your name on these, and so on and so forth, per the instructions that are actually listed on the document. So that's your multiple choice exam, 20%. See, it's not worth as much as the discussion grade. So please take your time in doing it, but also realize that if you end up with a grade that you're not expecting, meaning it's not, you didn't fail, but it's not an A, you can make up for it with the discussion grade, just as one example. Paper assignment, which is worth 25% of your grade. It's a term paper. It's due after week 5, beginning of week 6, which in this case would be Monday, April the 21st. You can bring it in class for that class date, or submit it via web typos, your assignments folder web typo by 11:59 p.m. that day, April the 21st. The document's already posted. It has a series of questions in it. Over the course of the next few weeks, we'll go over different aspects of my expectations around term papers, an introduction, a thesis statement or an argument, reciting of sources, having a reference page at the end of your paper, and so on and so forth. Keep it in Word format. Again, you need to be on time with this, in fairness to yourself and to the other students. So that's that. And then there's the take-home final exam, which is basically you will have one final exam essay to do. It's more or less like your term paper, except in this case, I really do expect you to only use the sources from the course and not use outside sources of any kind, because it's a final exam. And that's due in one of 2 ways. You can either hand it in the last class during the last class, which is Monday, May the 5th, or you can submit it through your assignments folder in Web Tyco by Saturday, May the 10th. And with that, you want to make sure that you're on time definitely for that one as well. And it's worth 20% of your total grade. Those are the 4 things that we're expected to do over the course of the semester. 4 assignments. One that goes throughout the semester. 2, one that's due after week 3, beginning of week 4. One that's due at the end of week 5, beginning of week 6. And one that's due at the end of the semester. So, again, I will go over all of that in more detail as the semester progresses. Now, as far as other policies are concerned, I have a simple late assignment policy. If you're late for an assignment, you'll get a 0. That's my rating policy. Meaning that I'm going to treat you like an adult if you treat me like an adult in the case of being on time. Everyone has reasons for being late. And my expectation here is that if this were a job, and to some extent this is kind of a job, and you had an assignment that was due by a certain deadline, and you couldn't meet that deadline, you would tell your supervisor that you couldn't meet this deadline or that you needed help in meeting it. And in any case, make them aware of the fact that you were having problems meeting the deadline. Could you get an extension? Can can we make other arrangements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a strict stickler. If some odd reason you get locked out of Web Tyco at 11:58 p.m. and you can't submit your assignment, please email it to me. Okay? Don't, if I get it at 12:20 a.m., you won't get a 0. I'm not that strict. But I am strict enough to where if you haven't notified me of the fact that you are having trouble or you have a computer glitch or there's some other issue that you're having in submitting your assignment in a timely manner and then you don't, I will have no choice but to give you a 0. And the reason I do that is simple. We set the criteria for the class so that every student understands the rules. And if I start bending and breaking rules so that individual students get an added advantage, then it's not fair. It's not fair to the students who struggle to meet all of the criteria for an assignment only to end up with a C and you have a higher grade simply because you decided that it didn't matter what my deadline was. So please be on time. And follow the late grade policy. As far as extra credit, I get this question a lot, and every semester I have to tell students I've never given extra credit and I never will give extra credit. And my philosophy is pretty simple around this too. It's about fairness, and it's about the fact that this is a college level course. Extra credit would assume that there's something extra that you can do to learn the material than other students are supposed to be learning this semester, and there really isn't anything extra you can do. You just do the work, and if you do the work the way you're supposed to do the work, you will do well in the course. You will have a B or an A. It's that simple. And if you're not doing that work, really extra credit's not going to matter. If you're not doing the work that you're supposed to do and you're not doing it in a timely manner and you're not doing it in a way that doesn't involve cheating, then by all means the extra credit's not going to matter. So that's where I stand on extra credit. One other thing that I have to go over as part of the course that UMC requires me to go over is the whole issue of plagiarization, speaking of cheating. All of you, by the end of week 2, which I believe is Sunday, March 31st? No, March 30th, Sunday, March 30th, is that you are expected to complete your plagiarism prevention exercise. I know some of you who've already been students here know what that exercise is. I will tell you what it is, officially and unofficially. Officially is so that you understand what plagiarism is, what it isn't, and to not do it, if at all possible. It's also to make sure that if in case you do plagiarize, you can't go to university and say to them that you didn't know that you hadn't plagiarized, because if you do the plagiarism prevention exercise, then you had to know. Um, right? That's for the university's protection as well. So that's the other reason behind the plagiarism prevention exercise. But in any case, the reason I have to talk about this is because plagiarism has become a pretty rampant part of the experience of the college experience, not just at UMUC, around the country. UMUC, it might be worse, might be a little bit better, but the reality is I've taught at UMUC now for a little bit more than 6 years. There's not a single semester or a single course I've taught at UMUC in which at least one student has not tried to plagiarize some point in the course. In some cases, I've had as many as 5 students attempt to do so. I don't think that a whole lot of people have gotten by me in terms of plagiarizing and getting away with it. And I've had to report quite a few people to UMUC administration for further sanctions in terms of plagiarization, because they ultimately will decide if you're caught plagiarizing, not only whether you fail a course or not, but if you're expelled from the university or not, which is ultimately the biggest form of punishment that someone can get for plagiarism. So I urge you to be very, very careful. If you think that you can get away with it, my advice to you is you're probably not going to get away with it. But if you are going to get away with it, I suggest that you do a little bit more than cutting and pasting from a website and putting it directly into a document and then claiming it as your own. Okay? That's just general rule number 1 in terms of how not to get caught plagiarizing. I will not say more than that because I don't want you to plagiarize. I want you to write in your own words, do your own citations, put together your own arguments. Even if your argument is similar to what someone else is writing, that's fine. Just cite the source. Say that you got it from Bentley and Ziegler. Say that you got it from me. Say that you got it from Peter Stearns and whoever else happens to be writing about this stuff around world history. Don't just, put the stuff down and act as if you wrote it. Okay? It's this is important stuff here, because ultimately this is about your learning, your education, and the value in which you place your education, period. It's not really about anything else beyond that. And if you cheat, which is what plagiarism is, what you're basically saying is that you don't care whether you learn anything or not, you just want a grade. And, it doesn't matter whether the grade's a D or a C to you, as long as you get a grade and get a piece of paper. And to me, and to anybody who takes education seriously as a student, that should be insulting. And I think that you need to, as students, if you are thinking about, cutting corners in this sort of way, really evaluate and reevaluate what it is that you're doing in terms of why you're doing college in the first place. But I'm saying all this as part of what UMUC wants me to do, which is to remind you of the fact that plagiarism comes with severe penalties. Okay? So, I don't expect any of you to cheat. I wouldn't be surprised if any of you do, but I hope and expect that you don't. Okay?